You're listening to Speaking Side Mount, the podcast where we talk all things side mount diving, from equipment, skills, techniques, and side mount diving expeditions to interviews with some of the world's top side mount divers. Whether you're new to side mount, been side mount diving for years, or just want to know more, this is the place for all things side mount. I'm your host, Steve Davis. Let's get wet.
Hey, welcome back to Speaking Side Mount. I'm Steve Davis. This episode is brought to you with the support of our brilliant sponsor, X-Deep. As those of you who follow my social media would have seen, this week I finally got my hands on a double set of the new X-Deep NX700 regulators. Clearly, from the 2 years plus of in-field testing and rave reviews from a bunch of great divers, they were always going to be good. But when you first set them up and see how stunningly well thought out the design is, especially with respect to hose routing, I've got to be honest, I was just blown away and smiling from ear to ear. As this episode is released, I'll be getting my first dives in on the NX700s, and I'll try and make sure that I do both open circuit and Sidewinder rebreather dives as soon as I can. I've been asked to do a review, which I'd be happy to do, but bear in mind, X-Deep are a massive supporter of this show, and I've been happily diving their gear since 2013, so I'm absolutely a fanboy and biased. But having said that, I'll give you my best as always, and you can be assured that I only dive equipment that I love. Now, massive thanks to Andrew Simpson at Global Dive Auckland for hooking me up with the very first set in New Zealand. He's a bigger man than me to let these out of his grasp, and I hope I'll see him diving the second sets of NX700s when we get some more stock. I also want to acknowledge the support of our patrons who month in, month out help to make this podcast possible. If you'd like to support the show, then check out the link on the podcast notes or on our Facebook page. A few weeks back, I received a message from Patrick Woodman asking if I'd seen the efforts of Skanda Coffield over the past year or so. And for sure I'd seen him featured in a couple of Philip Lemon's videos for Somos Los Cenotes, most notably the Blue Abyss dive, which was just stunning. If you haven't seen it or any of the other videos, check them out. Somos Los Cenotes. That one was episode 10 and they're on the DR Local YouTube channel. Now, Patrick related that Skanda had knocked out over 700 hours of exploration on the KISS Sidewinder in the last 18 months and is one of the most active cave explorers on the planet. He had me at Sidewinder, so I reached out to Skanda and we got into it. In fact, so much so that we have 2 episodes of amazing material for you all. Huge thanks to Skanda for selflessly giving his time to share with all of us. In this, the first interview, Skanda and I discussed his background in diving, how he came to base himself in Tulum, Mexico, his work with Protec Tulum, and then we dive deep into his exploration projects, how he uses the KISS Sidewinder to go places that no human has been before, and then Skanda shares on his best and worst moments in diving. All this and much, much more on this episode of Speaking Side Mount.
Skanda, welcome to Speaking Side Mount.
Thanks very much, Steve. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Great to have another Aussie on the show, or West Islander as we like to refer to you guys. I had Tamara on a while back, who I'm sure you know pretty well. Awesome to hear a relatively similar accent.
Yeah, it's pretty funny to listen to Tam on here and then, a lot of people that I know, and it's cool.
Brilliant. So to get us started, Patrick Woodman recommended that I chat to you, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's kick off by just learning a little bit about how you got into diving.
Yeah, so I'm from Melbourne originally, so just across the sea from you, I guess.
Yeah, 3 hours flight.
Yep. But I guess I was one of those people that had asthma as a kid, so for a long time wasn't able to dive. So I had gone on a holiday with family up to the Great Barrier Reef one year when I was a kid, and I wanted to do a discover scuba dive, and got to the asthma question and it was a big, can't do that, sorry. And so it was never something that I really thought about much more after that, although, living by the beach and snorkeling and being in the ocean all my life, thought it would be cool to be able to do, but never thought I could. And then I happened to be traveling in Southeast Asia and had met some friends in Thailand, and they said, hey, we heard about this spot, Koh Tao, where we can go and dive. It's supposed to be really cool. And so probably know what happens next. We went there. Yeah. They were a little bit more relaxed on the medical questionnaire. They asked, have you had an asthma attack recently? No, only when I was a kid. And they said, here's another medical form, just check no. And that was it. We loved it. We did the open water course. I signed up for the advanced course, and then, like many people, I guess, did a lot of tropical holiday diving in my spare time. Because I didn't know that, you could dive in Melbourne, right? It's not known as a diving destination. I guess you probably come across that as well in New Zealand.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't really see it as a diving destination. It's cold. It's not tropical. It's maybe not the clearest water at times. Yeah, it wasn't really until I met a fellow Melburnian on a bus in Thailand or Laos or somewhere, and they were telling me that they were part of a dive club in Melbourne. So I thought, wow, if there's diving in Melbourne, now all of a sudden I don't have to go to Southeast Asia to go diving or go to Queensland or wherever. I can do it at home. I joined the dive club. It was part of the Monash University Dive Club where I'd been studying, and slowly got into it. As soon as you can dive locally, then it was every weekend, let's go out diving, night dives midweek, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah, we had a club boat and a compressor and all of that. So slowly started to learn a little bit more how to run dive trips and that kind of thing. So we were quite lucky in that we would, regularly go on big trips around Australia. So I got to go and dive some places that are not usually dived, take our own boat on the trailer, take our compressor, and sort of camp in national parks and that kind of thing, and get to go dive.
Brilliant. And those sort of dive clubs are quite often filled with really, really passionate people who just want to dive, because as you say, sometimes the conditions aren't necessarily 30-meter visibility and super warm. So to want to dive in that, it's really all about the diving quite often and the actual physical being in the water. And you tend to meet some really cool people. And as you say, like Melbourne, I haven't dived there myself, but I know a few number of people there now. And many of them I've sort of met in places like Mount Gambier and so on. And they're really good divers who put a lot of time in the water.
Yeah, the diving in Melbourne is fantastic. Like, we've got a bit of everything. You can go shallow water reef diving. We've got walls. We've got drift dives. We've got deep wrecks, deep reefs. So it's got everything that you could really want. And a lot of the bucket list photography critters and macro stuff, people go to Lembe and sort of macro destinations. We have all of that there. Blue-ringed octopus, you go on a night dive, you see 4 or 5 of them.
Amazing. You're from Melbourne, you learned to dive in Koh Tao. Now you're in Mexico.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Well, it was sort of in part the influence of one of the guys in the club who is also called Steve, actually. One of those
Must be a nice guy.
Names. Good bloke, good bloke.
He's probably over 40 though, right?
No. He's my age.
A young Steve. I'm shocked.
Mid-30s. He was a little bit more advanced in his diving than I was. Started diving with the club, so he was sort of a bit of a mentor for me. And he was a cave diver. So we had done a club trip over to Whyalla in South Australia, where they have the giant cuttlefish aggregations.
Yes.
And on the way back, we stopped in Mount Gambier and had a look around there. And he sort of did a bit of tour guiding, show us some of the cave entrances there. And then we did a dive in, I don't know if you saw Ewan's Ponds when you were there.
Absolutely. I did a really nice dive there. It's just such a cool place, isn't it?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's stunning. And just such an easy, relaxed dive. For the listeners who don't know, it's a series of 3 ponds that are joined by like a natural sort of canal or channel where the water flows through. And it's crystal clear water. So coming from Melbourne, where 5-meter visibility is a good day out. And after being there and seeing all of that stuff, I thought, sign me up for a cabin class.
Yes.
So I did a cabin course and a intro to cave course, or what we would call intro to cave. I think CDAA now calling it basic cave.
Basic cave, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Not the advanced cave, but did all of that there. And so over a couple of years, spent a lot of time out at Mount Gambier doing trips back and forth. Got exposed to different things, and always had heard about Mexico, and just so happened that I had time between jobs. I used to be a high school teacher in Australia, but then I sort of wanted to travel a bit more and had applied for a bunch of jobs at international schools. And because the school year is different, right? We have a logical, the year starts in January, so the school year starts in January and ends in December, whereas in the Northern Hemisphere, it starts in June, July, September, depending on where you are. So I had a job lined up in Taiwan that was going to start I had to be there in July, and had finished work in Australia in December. So I had some time and thought that I might as well go and do a dive master course and an open water instructor course so that I could come back and teach in the club, because we had one instructor in the club that was somewhat active, but he had a family, so, and we'd done a lot of mentoring inside the club for new divers and that kind of thing, but wanted to be able to offer certifications for people and give people official training. So I thought I'd combine that with coming to Mexico and cave diving. So I came out here in the beginning of 2014 to become an open water scuba instructor and finish full cave diver training, and then sort of spent 5 months in Playa and Tulum and hanging out here, basically.
Yeah. And did you train at Protec?
I did train at Protec, yeah. So I finished off full cave training it was actually pretty cool. Managed to line it up with another guy I knew who was visiting from Australia. So we did our training together here with Kim at Protec, and then I was around. So I sort of kept diving and met some people, dove with friends in the caves here, and did some more guided dives with Kim and the guys at Protec. And then after doing the full cave in back mount, eventually had been really intrigued by side mount and signed up for a cave side mount crossover course, and of course loved it. Had a lot of fun with that and really enjoyed all of the caves here that does open up, because there's many caves that are back mount accessible, but there's also many that you just can't get into in back mount.
Yeah, so exactly. It's an amazing experience, isn't it? I had a similar thing when I went to Gozo. I was running a software company in America, and when I finished there in June, I kind of had this June to December window. It's when I went to Gozo Technical and hung out and did almost exactly the same thing. And when you go to a school like Protec or Gozo Technical or one of those places where there's such a high level of diving that goes on there, and you've got such what I would call world-class instructors as well. I can't tell you what it was like getting out of bed each morning for me. I don't know what it was like for you, but I'd be up at 6. I'd be getting ready for the day, and of course it was always beautiful weather in the summer. I'd have something to eat. I'd go down to the dive center early, and I'd just hang out with people, listen to what they were saying, and then do your thing. And you almost didn't want to leave at the end of the day. It was almost, that was the sad time when you went to go home at the end of the day.
Yeah. I definitely can relate to that. Like, I had this other job that I was supposed to go and start, and it was like a real, do I throw that out the window and stay in Mexico? But no, I did in the end follow through with the job that I committed to and left Mexico, but things didn't quite work out with the job. So I was back sort of a year later for a month, hanging out again in Tulum and doing more cave diving, picking everybody's brains at that point. Now one of my colleagues, Jaime, I was doing some guided dives with him, and what's it like to live in Mexico? What's it like to work at Protec? How is it living in Tulum? Asking all these questions and diving with him, they sort of planted the seed of the idea that maybe it would be cool to come back. Yeah. And then ultimately, I didn't really have a job to go back to in Australia and wasn't really sure if I wanted to go back to high school teaching. And Kim sort of said, hey, if you came back, we could help find you some work or something like that. I'm not sure if he thought that I would actually take him up on it or not, but didn't really have to think about it very long to decide, I'll go and give it a shot. And so I moved here at the beginning of 2016 to sort of give it a go, see how it is to live in Mexico full time and to work as a diving instructor. And then it became 9 months, and now it's pretty much, this is home, and I'm staying until
you're done. How did you find that transition from high school teaching in Melbourne and other parts of the world to living in Mexico?
Yeah, I mean, I always felt at home here. That's one of the cool things that I really liked. Like, for the first time I got here to Mexico, I arrived in Playa. I was sort of living in Playa, and I really felt like, this is a place that feels home. And I know a lot of people, and I had the perception also that Mexico is kind of unsafe and a bit of a dodgy sort of spot, but I don't find that's the case at all. And, I mean, it's probably the same in New Zealand. Like, growing up, spent a lot of time like running around out on the streets, playing cricket in the street or whatever, kicking footy in the street. And I'm not sure if that still happens in Australia. I sort of had the sense that everything was a lot more paranoid, a lot more like people are scared to sort of let their kids out and that kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas people are out and people are in the streets, and it's nice. You see kids playing in the streets, you see families out. I don't know. Yeah,
it's a fair comment. I actually was having that exact conversation with somebody yesterday. I was asked if I'd been to Mexico, and I recounted all of the places I've been to. And I've been to both coasts, so I've been to places like Cabo San Lucas and Ensenada and Manzanillo and so on, and also obviously to Playa and Tulum. And certainly I probably wouldn't go to Tijuana now, and that may be really unfair on Tijuana. And I went there in the early 80s and really enjoyed it. But clearly they've got some problems with drugs and so on. And of course, TV series like Narcos and El Chapo and so on kind of drive that. In the news media, it's not that I hate the news, but gee, if you spend too much time on the news, you get a pretty negative perception of the world, don't you? And I think that drives a lot of what happens in places like New Zealand and Australia, which are very, very safe countries. It's just, if you listen to the news, you're listening to the worst of what's going on, not the best of what's going on.
Totally.
And I actually did make the comment about Tulum and Yucatan and so on, that of course you hear of some things and there's a bit of theft and that sort of thing, but that happens everywhere. And if you're careful and you keep your nose clean, then it's a fantastic place, as many others are.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, as many people are, I'm super passionate about diving. Love to dive every day if I can and talk about diving. And so it sounds a little bit like what you were saying about Gozo, that it was just super cool to be able to come here and go dive every day and also have the time. Like for a lot of people, when you go somewhere, you visit a place and you want to do the cool dives, tick off a few dive sites you might have heard of or whatever. But I think one of the things that I like the most about being here this long is that you really get to go and dive the same places. I'm sure you feel the same way about your wreck, that, you know all the ins and outs, all the little off the beaten track places. You get to see stuff that people wouldn't normally see. And I think for me, that's one of the coolest things also about being able to stay in a place for a while and see how the dive sites grow, I guess, or see different parts of them, but also see them in different seasons.
Exactly. I kind of refer to that as owning a dive site. There's one thing to dive it. It's another thing to absolutely own it. And by that, I mean, you know it as well as you do the next turn in your house. Yeah, I love that feeling. You can get it on shipwrecks and certainly in caves as well. It is nice. And you were saying just before we started recording, you're taking a day off diving today. And as a passionate diver, that's another awesome thing. I'm going diving this weekend, but I haven't had the Sidewinder out for, I think, a month. So, and we'll talk about that in a minute too, but it's just been, it's been horrible. Partly we're coming into winter here, so we're in the opposite seasons, and weather, I had a trip cancelled. And so there's those sort of things. And of course, I'm pretty free and easy because I run businesses, so I can do what I want most of the time. But all of my friends, the buddies that I need to go diving, are really only available mostly on the weekends. So it's very much a one weekend to the next. As you say, when you're living somewhere like Gozo or Tulum in particular, where the dive sites are right on your doorstep, and it's throw your gear in the back of the truck and drive down and gear up and get in the water, and you can go every day. It's amazing. I do miss that.
For sure. Yeah, it was pretty easy to come and sort of transition into doing that. And, I guess high school teaching, a lot of that is transferable to teaching diving as well. How to teach people, working with people, it's all. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. You have a Master of Education, right? A master's degree. So how is it that professional teaching, I mean, what could a scuba instructor learn, or what should we learn from a school teacher?
It's not, rocket science sort of stuff, but just looking at the way that different people learn really and approach things. And, that's something that all good instructors will do, is sort of see how their student picks up on things and be able to present information in different ways. And, if one way doesn't work, then do it another way. And whether, you spend a lot more time working on the whiteboard, or you realize that your student maybe doesn't grasp things so well theoretically, so you're going to go and do it in a lot more land drills maybe, or, that's that kind of stuff that good instructors will do already. It's read how a student is and then teach to their student. One of the things that I found challenging coming from an education background where, and I'm sure you've probably seen this as well, is the horrendous quality of dive education material, the exams and that kind of thing.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess like a lot of agencies are maybe trying to modernize, like updating materials and having online material and that kind of thing. And some people producing their own material as well, like Steve Martin's videos and stuff to sort of complement education with an instructor is really good. Seeing what's out there and coming from an education, high school background where you have a curriculum and you deliver it and that kind of thing.
One thing about that, I noticed so many times that the questions that are in the knowledge reviews and also the exam questions, sometimes they're just so terribly written, it's hard to even understand what's being asked. And I think if there's any instructors listening, I mean, one thing that we can do to support that is whenever we see something like that, it doesn't make any sense either as a question or an answer, then it's worthwhile letting the agency know that there's an issue so that they can improve. Because of course, if they don't get feedback, they never will. One thing I did do, the agency I work with, I don't like their side mount manual at all. It's kind of a general overview of side mount and doesn't really take you anywhere rather than a historical, here's what side mount is, and it can go in so many different directions. So I actually wrote my own. It was like years ago now. I think I wrote it when I was in Gozo in 2016, and people buy it from me, which is awesome. But it's just a side mount book the way I teach it, which is exactly, totally. It takes you through the equipment and the skills and so on. And I use it as a course manual. So it's an additional reading over and above the e-learning that they typically do. The other thing that came out from what you said there was land drilling. And that's something I build into everything is, I never ask a student to do something in the water they haven't done on dry land, where we can completely verbalize and visually see what's required and what the standard is. And then, they get to do it in the water after they've practiced on land a few times. It's a brilliant thing to put into courses, isn't it?
Totally. And I mean, that's always something that we do here at Protec also. But then there's, depending, I suppose, on certain things, some things maybe with some students I would do more of on land and more talk about, like especially teaching complex navigation in caves. Maybe if we're talking about T-intersections or something, and we draw a diagram on the board and practice putting markers, not necessarily on the line, but okay, where would you mark, or that kind of thing. Maybe it wouldn't be something that I do on land, but then if the student looks like that they're a little bit like, oh, what's all of this, then we do it on land before we do it in water, of course. And that it all sort of comes together and clicks.
Yeah, something I saw at Mount Gambier, it was at Reef to Ridge, which unfortunately doesn't exist anymore, but they had this brilliant little line board that they use for teaching navigation. Did you ever see that?
No, I never went in there. I was in Mount Gambier in March last year, so
they'd already gone, unfortunately, which is a hell of a shame, and partly COVID related and partly other things. But one of the things I loved there was this line board they had, which was a diagram of a cave with lines, actually pieces of string attached to it. And it had jumps and gaps, and it also had T's and so on. And you had to put the cave markers on there as you went through, So I thought a brilliant way to teach that out of the water. And
totally.
Well, let's move on a bit. So tell us about the work that you do at Protec now.
So here we have a number of instructors, but Patrick and Kim being the senior instructors and sort of managers and bosses, they teach everything, but they're also quite busy doing various things. Patrick's often traveling internationally. I'm one of the other two full cave instructors here, so I teach everything up to full cave course. So a week could be doing some guiding, doing some teaching, whatever's going on really, which is really nice working at a shop like Protec, because it's not just, one thing. Get to change it up. Maybe I teach a side mount class, maybe I'm teaching a full cave class one week, then doing some, like, how in Mexico we have the recreational cabin tours with non-certified. So I still do that every now and again, and that's really fun just to change it up a little bit, and it's nice to go back sometimes and be at Dos Ojos again and doing the cabin line. And it's a little bit like when you take people for a DSD or an open water course and they see underwater for the first time, you see the cabins from the first time and you see their
face and the smile. And
Exactly. So that's really cool. I'm a Sidewinder diver and DPV diver. So, sometimes I get to go and take people on those kind of dives, which is pretty fun as well. And a bit of everything.
Brilliant. Let's move on a bit more beyond that, because that sounds amazing. And I agree with you, just having a variety of work. I used to love guiding. It was one of the favorite things that I did, was being able to take divers and introduce them to whatever you have. And as you say, seeing their faces after they go and do an amazing dive is just something else. And then seeing new people come through as well, and the look on their faces, they kind of catch the bug, as I call it, is brilliant. So Patrick mentioned you to me, and I obviously knew of you online a little as well before then, but his words to me were, you're one of the most active and passionate submerged cave explorers in Mexico right now. So let's start out with, what inspired you to want to go into submerged caves and go where no human being has been before, i.e. do the exploration side of diving?
Yeah. I mean, it never really started as like, yes, I want to be a cave explorer. But I guess the year that I was teaching in Taiwan, between Mexico trips, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos. I had a job where I had a lot of dead time that I had to be at the office, but not necessarily had anything productive to do. So I spent a lot of time watching YouTube videos of cave diving around the world, and watched a lot of Philip and Patrick's videos, and sort of
I love their ones. These are the DRSS
Amazing.
ones?
Yeah.
What got me about them was just how cool they were in the water.
Yeah.
Super slow and controlled
Yeah.
and amazing.
Totally. So I guess, then I moved to Mexico. Being here and not knowing many people that were not divers meant that a lot of time people would be busy and I'd just go diving by myself. So I started doing a lot of solo diving and mainly to learn dive sites so that I could guide people, So I'd go and dive a cave a few times and sort of get to know all the lines and sort of for fun, but also to sort of see where things went, and then got more interested in survey. So I took a survey class and then really wanted to keep the skills fresh. You do something and if you don't practice it, skills deteriorate. And some days we're spoiled for choice here. You wake up and in 10 minutes drive, there's 20 cenotes and you can be in so many different places. And sometimes it becomes a little bit overwhelming for me. Like, do I go here? Do I go there? What do I do? So I wanted to have sort of a little project. So I started a resurvey project to get to know a cave really well, to get to practice skills. And on those sort of days where I was like, don't have work, don't have any friends to dive with today, I'll just go and do my survey project. So I started doing that and, resurveyed a lot in one cave system and got to know it really well. And then slowly started to resurvey some other places, but then noticed that maybe there's some gaps in the cave map. Maybe there's some places that could be explored more. And then through the people here that I knew, got some explorers that said, hey, we've lost the data for this place, or can you go back and resurvey this? Started to do a bit of resurveying of more recently explored caves or rechecking caves that had been explored. And then slowly get to learn to read a cave a bit and sort of see where there could be more places to explore. And then started to add a little bit of line here, a little bit of line there. And then once you start doing that, it's pretty cool. Got hooked.
I've spoken to quite a few explorers who have gone to places which are well-beaten paths, if you like. So these are caves that everyone thinks this place is totally tapped out. There are no more leads here. And then they go in there and have a fresh set of eyes, and all of a sudden they're finding new passage. I mean, I heard about that from Christina Zanato in particular in the Bahamas.
Here, there's a lot of historic caves that were explored, in the 90s or early 2000s. And in part, I think there was a big surge in exploration of cave around 2010, 2011, 2012, when people started to dive modern side mount harnesses, Mexico-style side mount harnesses that allowed them to get into places that you're not going to fit in with a Hollis 100 maybe, or you're going to be too bulky in something like that. But with modern side mount harnesses and techniques, the Quiet Diver team, Patrick, Kim, Mauro, a lot of other explorers also then were able to go and find a lot of cave in places where exploration had been finished when people were diving in doubles, or even the light technology. Like if you think about the lights that we have these days, we're really sort of blessed with powerful lights that last for a long time, and we're not lugging giant canisters around, right? So I think for a lot of people that are starting diving now, cave diving or working in cave diving now, we're really lucky that we have the modern gear that we have, because it does open up a lot more possibilities, I suppose.
They add DPVs to that now too, can't you, with the battery technology that's with those.
Sidewinders, like it's almost not fair for the cave.
I agree.
Explore it so much more quickly now than in the past, and the logistics and that kind of thing make it a lot easier also. We have a project from last year where a friend had showed me a cave that had been explored by a few teams of explorers, and it was a little cave. There was maybe 1,400 feet of line in there. I resurveyed in 2 or 3 dives, and then we started exploring, and now 16,000, 17,000 feet of line.
Wow.
So really found the whole rest of the cave that people had just missed for whatever reason. But there's been a lot of that sort of recently also, that people have found new cave in sort of historic places. One of the Protec projects last year was exploration in what was Sistema Regina, just south of Tulum. And with the Sidewinders, with scooters, Jake, Patrick, some of the other guys, me a little bit, found a lot more cave. And then Jake actually connected that with a neighboring system through Maya Blue. So that was pretty cool to find a whole new section of the cave, and something that had been said exploration was done. And then connected onto another system as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Cool.
So you mentioned the Sidewinder, and you're probably aware that I started diving a Sidewinder nearly 2 years ago now,
Yeah.
and just absolutely love it. Even though the hard thing for me here in New Zealand is I have the only unit in the entire country, right? So
Oh, yeah.
supply lines are incredibly long. Everyone looks at me very strangely and likes to take
Yeah.
the piss, as we say here,
Yeah.
but I just love it so much. And I wish I had someone else to dive with it, to be honest,
Totally.
but we'll fix that later on. But
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about how you found out about the Sidewinder, how you got into it, and what you love about that specific rebreather.
I'd seen it for a while and had always been curious. Like I remember seeing Marissa Eckhart when she was down here, and she was talking me through it one day when she was building it or setting it up, and it looked pretty cool. But I'd seen some other people diving it, and it really didn't look like a very clean or sexy configuration. I had a JJ, which I really liked, but it meant also that I was really limited in the size of cave that I could dive. And there are a few times that I was diving with other people that had side-mounted rebreathers, not the Sidewinder, the other tube style. And they could kind of fit a little bit better than me in the JJ, but then to have the same bailout equivalent, they had to wear a second tank like a stage, so then that increased the profile. So for me, that was never really a good solution, because then you have two stages like you would in side mount. You have the same profile as a diver with the back mount rebreather anyway. So then kind of what's the point? And then, yeah, it was, well, you know, the story from Patrick and Philip that they saw Ed in Dominican for the recovery. Philip then went over and got trained. And then once Patrick got on it, sort of seeing him dive and seeing the way he had it set up. And then we were in Sardinia a couple of years ago for summer, and seeing him dive there when he'd still had it pretty new, it looked pretty cool. And so seeing that in the water and seeing Daniele over there and on his unit as well, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna sell the JJ. I'm gonna get one of those. That's gonna make me happy.
Yeah, I mean, for the sort of diving you're doing for cave diving, I dive it off boats quite a lot. Great thing about the Sidewinder is it's relatively light, and so wearing it around isn't a problem. Diving it off a rib is super easy. And the only real challenge on boats is that it doesn't stand up, and the boats are all set up for units that stand up. So you've got to kind of find a bit of space that's a bit wider, and that again involves you having discussions with everyone else on the boat to find your space. But once you're there, once you find the right cylinders for it as well, it's just brilliant. And I can just imagine cave diving. I went and trained with Ed as well. Mine's very much set up Ed style. So I really do want to know a bit more about the way that Patrick sets his up and the way you guys are set up on the X-Deep Stealth tech, because I've got an H harness. I've got a shoulder dump, which I really like. I have to say that, but it's just so well suited to setting up on the X-Deep tech.
Totally. Come back to what you're saying about diving off the boats. I've actually the last 2 days spent playing with different tank sizes and different configurations and wetsuit, because I don't go to the ocean much, but you know, there's a few cool dives here that I would like to do with the rebreather. You know, go over to Cozumel, or we have bull sharks that come in seasonally, so that would be kind of cool to do with the Sidewinder as well. So just having a little bit of play with the different configurations and seeing how it works and seeing what works best.
Yeah. I'll be interested how you end up there. So how I dive it here now, I started out because we're very much a steel tank, steel cylinder land here in New Zealand, because we're in dry suits. So 12-litre steels are the weapon of choice for most technical divers here. And I started diving those on boats, but they're just so heavy. And if you're on a rib, again, it's not a problem because you can rest everything on the hull and just fall over the side. So that's not a problem. But as soon as you get on a charter boat, I haven't thought myself it's the same as open circuit side mount diving where you can don cylinders in the water. I really want to get in the water with my bailouts on, or at least one of them on. So in that way, you find yourself walking around a little. And so I found the 12s pretty hard, but I found some 7-litre steels or 40 cubic feet. And they are just amazing. So they're super light. You've still got truckloads of bailout. I mean, you've got 14 litres of bailout. It's redundant bailout, which is what I love about it as well. So if one blows up, you've still got another one. So the 7-litre cylinders just changed my life here. And now I'm super comfortable. And as I said, all I've got to do is find a bit of space to be able to don and doff, and everything is excellent. So, and saltwater diving, they're great. I mean, the next step for me is, because quite a few guys here are rebreather divers, they're not diving super deep, but they're diving in the 70, 80 meter range. So I need to get myself back up to normoxic trimix on it. I'm searching around now how I can figure that out. I think I might be able to go to Australia for it actually, which would be cool. And then of course I want to get it in the caves when I can as well. And So in terms of your projects, how is the Sidewinder supporting what you're doing there?
It makes everything better in some ways. No, I mean, like some of the places we've been exploring, it's right on the halocline, it's salt, fresh water, it percolates a lot. So like you go there, open circuit, you have a couple of seconds to look around, see where the cave's going, make a tie off and then go. Otherwise you're in zero visibility already. Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, not having bubbles makes things a whole heap easier. I mean, you've still got a lot of percolation because it's completely new, but it's a lot less than if it would be open circuit. So from that side of things, the other thing is we've just got time, especially some of the further places that, maybe we're double stage DPV dive to get to where we want to work. You have maybe 1 or 2 attempts to go and check this lead. And if it doesn't go, then I can check that lead, but then I don't have the gas. I've got to turn around and go home. Yeah. And now, we have the time doing these dives that we can set it up so that we have enough bailout in the cave if we need or whatever, but that we can get to where the exploration is happening and spend time there and actually find if there is more cave to explore. So that's probably the other thing.
Yeah. I know Ed's got a saying, gas stress, distance stress, and time stress. One thing which is having a tool that enables you to do the dives, but when you're actually doing them, just knowing that you've got so much time, managing bailout is important, but you've just got so many options on the Sidewinder. It's just brilliant. Apart from my initial training with Ed, I haven't been able to take it in caves, and we did some really, really good cave diving on it. So I so enjoyed that. And we did go through some little small stuff, which not grinder restrictions, but through some tight places where you certainly would need to be in side mount. And it was identical to open circuit, just beautiful from that point of view.
No, it's fantastic.
Excellent. So in terms of the projects that you're working on now, where is your exploration focused?
In some ways, we've got a whole lot of different things going on at the moment. Most of it, unfortunately, it's kind of top secret, so don't want to mention too much.
Someone come and jump your claim or something? Or?
No. We're working on some interesting things, so we want to sort of finish the project and then talk about it kind of stuff.
Okay.
But it's kind of cool. Like one of the places that I was resurveying is a cenote south of Tulum, and I did some exploration there, but didn't really find a whole lot of cave. And it was kind of hard cave to explore. It was percolated a lot and it was deeper for Mexico. So some of the passages were at 21, 22 meters. So with the percolation and with the depth, exploration there was kind of challenging. And I've done a couple of days now going back there and put a whole bunch more line. And it's interesting. Some of the cave passages are going towards the lines of another cave that we've been exploring.
Right.
So that's the other thing, is that I've got to go back to the other side now and do some dives there and see if there's anything. And that's in cave that I was mentioned before, Santa Maria, where we sort of went from 1,400 feet to 1,700 feet or so.
Yeah.
And there's a few more places in there that I still need to go back to, but they're not high on the priorities. Like you mentioned that most of the places you can fit in side mount, you can fit with the Sidewinder. There's a few places in there that just, there's no way you can fit with the Sidewinder. So it's pretty small, it's pretty nasty. And I should go back to push it and see if it keeps going, but not nice. It's not fun diving. So putting that off.
Yeah.
I've been doing some more exploration with Philip and Tristan in Moyil. And so we've still got a few ongoing things down there.
It sounds amazing there.
Still going, which is super cool to be part of. There's lots going on. And then there's Mexico, where we're blessed that there is so much that is undiscovered still. Get out in the jungle, go for a hike around and hope to find new places. Yeah. It's been really rainy here the last week, so my motivation to go walk around in the jungle when it's pouring down rain is quite low. But I was out last week and didn't really find anything, but you got to do it. You got to put in the time out in the jungle walking around to find something new.
Yeah, one of my lasting memories of Mexico is the mosquitoes as well. So I can just imagine what that's like.
Now that we've had a bit of rain, it's pretty brutal.
If anyone hasn't been there, I've got to just describe this to you. I remember I was doing my land drills for Intro to Cave, and standing there and having your complete T-shirt covered in mosquitoes. I kid you not, you could not see the design on the T-shirt for them. And then sort of having to shake your body and they're actually biting you through your T-shirt as well. You can feel it on your back. It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
No, and some of the places, like you'll be in the water putting on your tanks and stuff, and you'll sort of go to put a reg in your mouth and swallow mosquitoes. It's too much and horrible. Always
purge first, right?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I've had it when, you put your mask on and there's mosquitoes trapped inside your mask. This is not nice.
Yeah, anyhow, such is what you need to do to get there, hey? So with all the
That's
exploration that you're doing and diving in Mexico, you must have had some really awesome moments and perhaps some not so awesome moments. Can you tell us a bit about your favorite times and maybe some times where you've sort of bit down and thought this is not quite so good?
Yeah, I've had a few not fun moments. A little bit pushing too hard, maybe a little bit too enthusiastic, a little bit too gung-ho, maybe. There's a cave in Moil. I don't know if you've been or did some diving down there, but Chulo, which is part of the Caterpillar system, was explored by some of the old Protec guys, Alvaro and so on, and Mauro and some other guys. And I pushed a section of cave in there that turned out to open up into a whole nother part of the cave that people hadn't been to before, and put a bunch of line in there and kind of walled that in a lot of places. But there was one spot where I was quite a ways back, a couple of no mount restrictions in, and there was like a little hole, and it looked like maybe there was something through the hole. So, I take off a tank, start to squeeze in. I think, it's a bit tight, but if I push, I'm going to pop through. And I sort of exhaled, get my profile as low as possible, dumped all the gas, went in, and then I was like, oh, actually, I don't fit through here. This is too tight. And went to back out, and something had got caught on the ceiling. So I'm sort of in there, floor touching my belly, back touching the ceiling, can't go forward, can't go back. And that wasn't a fun feeling. And then you feel the panic sort of rise up, and, I sort of had to talk myself through it. I've got a shitload of gas. It's shallow. I got myself in here. Just need to stop, take a few breaths. Of course, it was zero visibility by this point. I was trying to wiggle back and forth to get in and out, silted it out completely. So I'm there in zero visibility, can't move forward, can't move back. And yeah, could feel the panic coming, and then was like, no, chill out, breathe, think, okay, wiggle this way, wiggle that way, reach back. Can I get myself unstuck? And then managed to get myself unstuck. After that, then I was like, called the dive for myself, and was pretty happy to be out of the water. And especially when you're diving every day in caves and diving small caves, you sort of get used to diving small caves. And then your level, you could become very used to being in very tight conditions or very nasty conditions or zero visibility all the time, and then step back a little bit, I guess, or I needed to step back a little bit, have something happen to be like, actually, I don't need to push so hard. This is pretty extreme what we're doing already. Back it off a little bit.
Yeah.
Backed it off for 6 months or so, and then something else happened, and then I was like, oh yeah, okay, that was a bad idea. I'm not going to do that again. And you learn from all this sort of stuff. And make a better diver. And yeah.
So it just brings me back to my interviews with Steve Bogarts as well. In fact, two things: my interviews with him, and also the time that I got stuck on Canterbury, which is in Stratus Cass's book, Close Calls. And it's exactly that same experience, but in the shipwreck, right? Where you've put yourself somewhere where you shouldn't have gone. And for me, I'm kind of sideways at the back of a boiler room with 3 cylinders on, which is pretty dumb in itself inside the wreck. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I can get through here. And of course, I've got pipe work and crap everywhere. So there's entanglement hazards just about everywhere I looked. And I was caught up on one or more of them. And I couldn't go forward, couldn't go back. And you described it exactly the way it is, right? The first thing that happens is it just wells up. You feel it in your chest, and it goes straight up from there to your head. All you want to do is fight against what's holding you. You've got to stop yourself doing that. And again, exactly the same thought process too, which is I've got tons of gas. I was a little deeper. I was 30 odd meters. But having said that, hopefully there's always a way to get out of it. If you got in, you can get out, and you just have to solve the problem that's in front of you. And one thing Steve talked about, which also came to me, was this progressive growth in your comfort level. If you expose yourself to a particular thing, in this case, moving through restrictions, and you do it enough, number one, you learn what you can fit through, but also your comfort level grows and your ability to deal with an issue grows. Probably early in your dive career, you wouldn't have dealt with that, right?
No, totally. And there's places now that I think before was like, oh, that's pretty small, that's pretty tight. And now it's like, well, yeah, that was small 2 years ago, but now I have 2 years of experience of diving smaller cave or different experiences, and your perspective changes.
Okay, well, so what about your most awesome experience?
Probably, I don't know if you follow the Somos Los Cenotes videos.
I do.
Project, yeah. So we did a couple that were pretty cool actually with Philip and Kim last year, and one of them was Philip was filming Kim and I going to the end of the line and exploring and pushing the end of the line. We scooted to the end of the line, and I think that was probably one of the most amazing days, where both Kim and I emptied reels. We got it all on film, beautiful cave, stunning. And yeah, I mean, so that kind of thing is just incredible. What a feeling. You come out of the dive, big smiles, you've had a great day with mates. Yeah, that kind of stuff every time. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And then having someone like Philip capture the experience and be able to relive it through video, that is that well done as well.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've had some really cool dives, recently. One of the things that was really nice about that pandemic was that we couldn't really work for 3 months or so, but that meant that all of the staff here at Protec were free to go diving together, which is something that doesn't really happen very often otherwise. So really cool to just spend a lot of time diving with the other instructors I work with, spend a lot of time hanging out with Patrick, with Jake, with Jaime, the other guys, Tamara, and getting to do cool dives and go explore and share that with your colleagues and friends is really amazing.
Yeah, then it builds the team as well. And plus, I think the standard that everyone improves by, you know, just spending time with each other as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. And now that I'm thinking of it, the list is just like, this spot, this spot.
Really cool. Well, that was really my next question is what next? What's coming up for you?
Well, I shouldn't complain, but I've had quite a busy high season that has only really just sort of stopped now, which has been fantastic to be busy and have lots of work, especially now with the pandemic and how things are. But it's also quite nice to look at my calendar and see that I do have quite a bit of free time to get out and do more exploration. So a bit of jungle walking, maybe some more resurvey projects. We may get out trying to find some new cenotes. But also, hopefully, when Patrick's back, we have a dive or a couple of deeper dives planned that have just sort of been on hold due to his travel, various reasons. You know, all of us have dived our dry suits a lot, so various times have got very leaky dry suits, so haven't wanted to go and do any deep dives in a wet dry suit.
No.
Hopefully the cards are all going to come together and we're going to be able to do some deeper dives with the Sidewinders, doing some exploration when we have dry suits and people are in the right place. Bit of that. And if things are sort of possible to travel and stuff, it'd be nice to go over to Dominican Republic and do some travel as well. As a passionate diver, you know, it's cool to go to different places and dive different sites. So I was lucky enough to go to Florida, and we dove up at Ed's place earlier in this year. It was super cool to go to Mariana and see all those sort of dive sites. But for a long time, I really wanted to go to the Dominican Republic and go diving over there. So maybe that'll happen. We'll see.
Yeah, it's very different diving in Florida to Mexico too. How did you find that? How did you find Jackson Blue and Hole in the Wall?
It was super cool. It was amazing.
With flow.
I mean, I'd been up around the High Springs area before a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So it was cool to go up to Mariana and see the caves there, and the whole experience on the mill pond is just fantastic.
It is.
For anyone that hasn't been, it's what a cool place. When you go to Hole in the Wall, you load up your little pontoon boat, cruise on over, gear up, go in. It's just super cool.
Yeah. And it's amazing cave too. I mean, I love JB Jackson Blue itself. I thought that was brilliant, but Hole in the Wall to me was just something much more. I love the entrance where you've got that vertical drop when you first go in, and then cool. Opens up into massive passages. And then they've got formations in there as well, which is a little unusual. Yeah. And then there's some really narrow little parts, and the navigation is super complex. It was very, very cool. We did a 3-hour dive in there. I just loved it. Loved it. Yeah. And do you get home very often, or clearly not at the moment?
Well, obviously now not at the moment, with Australia having quarantine and restrictions and all that kind of thing. It would be nice to go home more, but it's far. Yeah. To travel from Mexico to Australia, it's 24, 26 hours travel time. So it means that I want to go for a decent chunk of time when I'm back, which also means that I have to choose the timing for work here that works for everybody at the dive shop as well. And unfortunately, I hate winter, and Melbourne winter sucks. Yeah. You know, for the shop, for Mexico, that's probably the best time for me to leave, but I don't want to be over there when it's winter, it's cold, it's rainy. Yeah. I don't really do much. So, you know, I was lucky enough to go back in March last year, and that was really nice. Tail end of summer, I got some good weather, really nice to catch up with friends and family. I managed to sneak in a dive trip to Mount Gambier for a couple of days, so that was good fun. We'll see when all of the pandemic stuff sort of quiets.
I'm hoping soon. You mentioned Sardinia. I'm scheduled to be at the Flow event with the crew at Blue Foria there in October. And I've just had my first shot of the vaccine, so I'm super excited about that. I've got my next one in a couple of weeks. I'm allowed to leave the country. That's not a problem. But if you want to come back, you have to go into managed isolation for 2 weeks. And if you leave voluntarily, you have to pay for it.
which is fair enough. I mean, I'm not debating that, but I'm kind of hoping at some point, if you're vaccinated, then maybe you get a negative test before you come back. You can come back in without having to go through that time-consuming and expensive process. So excited about that. Gee, I want to come back to Mexico so bad too. I really would love to come see you guys and a few of the other people I know there as well. So we'll just some point, I have to get that into the schedule. And yeah, as you say, so far, I mean, New Zealand is pretty much exactly the same as Australia. We have to fly to the States and then cross the States to get over to you. But I did it in Florida in 2019, so there's no reason why it can't be done, hey? So
No, that's it. Yeah, I mean, ideally, sometime in the future, it would be cool to be able to go back and do some teaching and that kind of thing in Australia. And a couple of my friends, looks like we could line something up like that. And I know that Tamara, when she was back, was, doing some side mount teaching and this and that. So, I think that would be a cool experience to go and take a little bit of Mexico-style cave diving or side mount diving. Yeah,
because the Australian style is kind of a little bit different it's actually different to almost everyone else, the way that they teach side mount there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. Yeah, the CDAA have their way. And certainly I teach Mexico style because that's how I was taught. And that's what we were doing at Gozo as well. So it is interesting to take that to places and have people see what you're doing. Yeah, you would certainly have a point of difference there as well. I'm really keen to go back to Mount Gambier too. I just love Tank Cave. I want to go back and do a whole lot more in there. That was so much fun. And have you been to the Nullarbor?
No, I've never been. So, there's
a Walgan and Cocklebiddy and so on.
That would be amazing to get out there.
Yeah.
So that's a big expedition.
Well, it is. It's like a 24-hour drive. And then, of course, your safety and so on that you have to build into everything because no one can come and help you if you have a problem.
No.
But having said that, there's a bunch of people who run expeditions out there, and I'd love to do one of those sometime. It would be just brilliant.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. We'll wait and see when Australia opens up.
Yeah.
Schedule a trip over there together. That'd be fun.
Yeah, certainly next year. One thing would be worth doing is perhaps I'll put it out there when I'm going and with enough lead time for others and see if we can organise something to a place like that or even a Mount Gambier trip when it's not too cold because they get cold in winter as well in South Australia.
Yeah, Mount Gambier is super cool. Really, the conditions can be pretty rough. Like either it's bloody cold in winter or really hot. Like I remember summertime there hiking with doubles. Did you ever dive in Gillsby's?
Yes.
Yeah, so absolutely stunning spot. But the walk down those stairs,
down the steps,
doubles.
No, I only dive side mount.
20 degrees outside. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the water's generally pretty cool as well. So I think from memory it's about 15 Celsius all year round anyhow. So you do kind of have to dry suit it. Now I think shoulder seasons are the answer. March to May time period or in the November time frame, November to December before it gets too hot and before it gets too cold. Mate, awesome. I think we've got a decent amount of material there and it's been so cool to meet you and catch up and learn a bit more about your diving. Congratulations on the exploration you're doing too. I mean, to have someone like Patrick Woodman point you out to me and say, hey, you've got to talk to Skanda. He's doing just some amazing stuff and he's knocked up so many hours on the Sidewinder. It's crazy. So, that's a very, very cool place to have yourself in. And so congratulations on that.
Totally. I mean, very lucky landed in an amazing place for diving in general and Protec. The amount of knowledge that I have access to is just fantastic. Like Kim, Patrick, all the other instructors as well. Everyone has a really strong diving background, from rebreathers to Mexico cave diving history to everything in between. It's just fantastic. So it's a really cool place and super lucky to be here.
Exactly.
And then to be able to pass it on, super cool.
Yeah, cool. Well, again, thank you very much. Catch up soon, I hope.
Yeah, nice to meet you and nice to chat.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I hope you got as much out of this episode as I did making it. It was phenomenal to meet and catch up with Skanda and learn more about his diving in Mexico and in particular his cave exploration and use of the KISS Sidewinder. Thanks so much to Skanda for sharing. Thank you to all of you for listening, and especially thanks to X-Deep and the patrons of Speaking Sidemount for supporting this show. It makes everything you've just listened to possible. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
You've been listening to Speaking Sidemount from www.sidemountpros.com. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and consider leaving us a 5-star review. If there's something you'd like us to cover on the show, then let us know via our Facebook page listed in the podcast notes. Thanks again, and we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Speaking Sidemount.